list for vouchers through the Child Care Resource Center. So when I went to college and when I started working, that is how I had child care. What was the other part?
I think finances and survival.
Finance, survival. When I found out I was pregnant, the day that I told my parents, I was immediately kicked out and I had to move in with my boyfriend who's in the military. So I moved into his house and I lived in his house, so I didn't have any expenses, I didn't have any bills. Everything was taken care of for me, and he was gone throughout my whole pregnancy. So I basically was just living off of him, and he had a stable job when he came back. So I was living off of him, but then, problems arose and I had to deal with domestic violence, so I eventually had to leave. And that's when things really, really, really got tough for me, because it was literally, it felt for me a matter of life or death. Do I stay here and have everything taken care of for me, or do I leave and start over and try to build this life that I've never lived before? So I had to leave, I had to find a job, I had to couch surf for a while, I had to go to my mom's for a while, then I had to go to my dad's for a while, then I had to go to my aunt's for a while, and I was just moving from place to place because I didn't know what to do. And it took a long time for me to try to stabilize just one home for us and have her own room and have my room and have enough money to pay for all the bills and pay for everything. And I feel like regardless of how old you are, raising a child is not easy. I've had to move to certain cities just so I can get her into a good public school so I don't have to pay for a private school. I've had to make a lot of sacrifices, and I think that's part of parenting in general, regardless of age. The only difference for me is that being young, it's very hard to find a very good paying job, especially if you don't have a degree. So that's been my biggest challenge.
For me, childcare as well was I guess one of the handouts that I did receive, and I say that proudly because it's the most priceless thing I could have ever received. With that being said, so I was able to receive a contracted slot at the daycare that my children went to, and a part of that was I either had to be in school or be working, and I had to attend parenting groups, which I love, so there was no negative or downside to that. But that afforded me the opportunity to, I worked full-time since I was 15, never going to stop. But I worked full-time and was able to do that and then also go to school as well. So in addition to the child care, I also had my family who, I swear by God, without them I wouldn't be where I am today. And I can definitely appreciate the supports I had from my family and from the child care. So as far as, housing goes, I've always had to pay market rent, but I was afforded the opportunity to work full-time to do that. Has it been a struggle? Yes. I mean, I've had my ups and downs. I've been homeless. I've couch surfed as well with my children in tow. It's not easy, but I always find a way to get back up. And, it's something inspiring knowing where you've been to where you get to, and knowing that that's not the end. I mean, I will fall again, and I know it's inevitable. But, knowing that I have my children, right behind me, following me, it's definitely a motivation. So, I was always able to get by, always able to just get by. I can definitely look at other people's situations like, man, I need to start smiling. I'm alive today. So it's definitely, although I've been in my down times, I've been able to get back up and take it for what it is.
The next question I think is more so for me, but you guys chime in. It's a four-part question. What are the ages of the Young Parent Policy Fellows? Youngest, oldest, how many are in the group? And are they all active? So we have an age range of 18 to 29 years old. Right now, I would say there are 8 active members. One of our fellows actually gave birth a month ago, so she's been taking a break. And there are a couple who have been involved in a lot of activities, so they aren't as active as they used to be. And the second part of the question, how do the YPPF interact with other young teen parents? It varies. There's opportunities for advocacy trainings. Hopefully all of you are coming to Lobby Day in March. Advocacy trainings are trainings that we do in preparation for Lobby Day. This group didn't have the opportunity this past year to do advocacy trainings, but moving forward in preparation for that, that's an opportunity that they will have to go into teen living programs, into other programs that are working with teen parents. But besides that, there isn't an active way that they're, interacting with teen parents. Are there teen young fathers in the YPPF? No. So if you have some to suggest to us, please give them our contact information. As you all know, I'm assuming you know, it's sometimes challenging to get young dads involved in this type of work for a variety of reasons. And so that's also been a challenge for us. So if you have young men who are interested, please give me their information so I can harass them and get them involved. And the last part of that question, are you co-parenting? Thoughts and feelings about co-parenting? That one for you guys.
Definitely co-parenting, and it's been a challenge. My first two children are from my high school, whatever. I'm not going to say sweetheart anymore, but we were at one time very much in love. And we went through, there was a lot of domestic violence there, and I finally left him when I was 20, and after being with him since I was 14. And that was difficult. We are just now, I'm 27, at an age where over the last 2 years, we've just been able to do it, to get it right. We're not 100% there, but we can definitely be in the same room. He takes the children every weekend, and but it's been a long journey. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. My youngest, Zachary, I'm still with his father, so co-parenting, but then to add in the fact that I have two other children from a previous relationship, and I'm so young, and we're the same age, is definitely been a challenge in and of itself. So it's definitely not easy. We clash in a lot of different things, but we're still running strong with it. So it's not always easy, but we're going through it.
If you had to give one piece of advice to your pregnant self, first pregnancy, what would it be?
I mean, I guess my biggest issue with my first pregnancy was that I was so determined not to fail in anybody's eyes. And so I made all of my decisions when it came to binkies, or when they get off the bottles, or what time they should go to bed. I mean, I definitely would buy the book because I was so afraid that people were going to judge me. So there's no way I'm screwing this up. But with my third child, I was well into my 20s, and the beauty of being able to do whatever I want, and I say that, not whatever I want, but being able to make a decision feeling like nobody's judging me has been such an experience that I wish I had with all three of my children. So I would say that although you feel like people are judging you, I guess that I wish that I wouldn't have made my decisions based on that.
I'll answer the co-parenting question first. It's okay. It's okay. I actually spent a lot of time blogging about this. I'm so glad you guys asked. Co-parenting has had its ups and downs. I feel like I'm finally in a place where everything is so peaceful and so organized, but it took almost 6 years to get here. In the beginning, again, because of this fear of being judged, I feel like I had to follow everything by the book and do everything how other parents were doing it. If other parents were putting their kids to bed at 7:30, I had to do it at 7, so I could be just a little bit better than them. And I would try to do everything the way other people expected me to do it because I wanted the best for my child, and I figured everybody else knows what to do, so I'm just going to do what everyone else is doing. That presented issues also with the father because he felt like, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And so we clashed in a lot of ways. Also, he was gone, he was on leave throughout my entire pregnancy and only came back 4 days before I gave birth. So he didn't know anything and didn't learn anything about parenting throughout that whole process. And so, he literally came back and dropped off his gear, and, in a few days I was in labor giving birth to a child, and the only knowledge he has of raising a child was within those 3 days, and that was very little time. So when the child was born, he didn't know how to hold, he didn't know how to change a diaper, he didn't know how to feed, and being the cranky mom who just gave birth, you just start arguing immediately, and it was just argument after argument after argument, and it got to the point where he turned to alcohol, and I turned to, the wall, And it got really bad between us, and there was no communication at one point, and then things got physical. And so that's when I left, and things were at a point where me and him didn't talk for a long time, and he didn't see his child for a very long time. And then finally he decided to come back into the picture. We started seeing her again, and at that point, and then I was scared. I was like, does he know how to raise a child? Does he know how to spend time with her? And so that caused arguments. And things got ugly for a long time, and then finally he thought that he could do a better job than I could, so he tried to file for custody. And so we went through a custody case for about a year, or maybe less. And I was awarded full custody, sole, physical, and everything custody. And he got visitation on the weekends. And surprisingly, it was the best thing that ever happened to us, because now we've kind of defined what roles we have as parents, and I'm taking on this responsibility of being the mother Monday through Saturday, and I'm doing all of this and doing all of that, and his role is just to spend time with her on Sunday. And growing up, I've dealt with so many different opinions on this, because I grew up with that kind of family. I grew up living with my mom and only seeing my dad on Sundays, and I was totally fine with it. But I feel like society makes it feel like that's wrong, and that a father who only sees his kid on a Sunday is a deadbeat dad. But then I started thinking, well, how much quality time do I spend with my child during the week? Maybe an hour a day, because by the time I get out of work, by the time I pick her up and give her dinner and give her a bath, I literally have an hour, maybe 45 minutes to spend quality time with her. So should I really be judging him for only seeing her on Sunday and spending, 8 to 9 quality hours with her? So I let go of a lot of the judgment that I had towards him, and I've been able to kind of talk to him more and get him more involved and let him know more about the things that are going on in her life. My daughter was also born with congenital hypothyroidism, so we're in the hospital a lot. And so I kind of open the doors and let him get as involved as much as get him involved as much as he wants to, without putting this pressure on him of, you have to be here at this time, you have to be here for that, you have to be here for that. It's something that I'm doing for my daughter more than anything. Of course I want the kind of father that is there for everything all the time, but realistically I can't be that mother either. So it's like a little bit of a push and a little bit of giving. We have to find an equal balance, and I feel like we're kind of getting to the point right now where everything's peaceful. Emailing has really helped. I love 2011 because I can email him back and forth. Every month I just send him a calendar of like all her appointments and everything, and then I've gotten positive feedback from him, and that's probably the first time I ever got anything positive from him. So virtual communication has been amazing because it doesn't lead into arguments, it doesn't lead into problems. So lately it's been pretty good.
How has the transition into a young mother impacted the way of conversing with your children about sex when they get older?
I'm not waiting until they get older. I talk to them about it now. At an appropriate level, I guess you could say. My son's 10 and he'll be 11 in December, and my daughter's 9. And even aside from sex, I talk about drugs, and people think I'm nuts. And it's like, I shouldn't be like that. I'm a strong believer, and as long as it's appropriate, it's age appropriate, it needs to be talked about. Even with, Natasha saying that it was the one thing that really wasn't talked about. It's taboo in our society, and it shouldn't be. It's natural, and it's going to happen, and people have feelings and emotions and urges, and it should not be pushed aside because the parent is uncomfortable talking about it. It is uncomfortable. I sit here and think, like, how am I going to say it? Should I get a book? Should I get a movie? And I'm like, no, just have a real conversation. And I have been successful at doing that. And I feel like, I really get in with my daughter, and I know I should address both, but I don't know, I just don't want this to be repeated. And I don't want it to be repeated. So I'm very adamant about speaking about sex with my children.
Well, my daughter's only 5, so this conversation has not come up yet, thank God. But I realize that a lot of this sex talk has to do with the communication that you have in general with your children. So at an early age, me and her have kind of started like this mommy and daughter counseling at our hospital. And it's kind of a way that we've started just building a strong relationship and opening up the means of communication. And it's just a place where her and I can just talk about anything, and I won't get mad, she won't get mad, and it's just a very comfortable place to talk about anything. And part of why I'm doing this is because I really want her to be comfortable as she gets older, coming to me to talk to me about anything at any time, about, again, anything. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to bring up the conversation about sex, but I do know that I want to talk about it with her way before she hears about it through her friends, because that's how I learned about everything. And of course, I learned the craziest things. You know, if you drink soda after you have sex, you won't get pregnant. You know, and if you turn the condom inside out, just crazy things that are going around in schools that you wouldn't believe, but people really believe because no one else is telling them otherwise. So I know that early on, I'm going to start talking with my daughter, and not just about sex, but about relationships, about feelings, about emotions, about dating, because, you know, when you feel so connected with someone like I did, and you feel like sex is the right thing to do, you do it, and you don't realize that there's so many other things that come with making that decision. So I have some planning to do, some thinking. Hopefully I don't have to do it anytime soon.
What advice would you give to teens who are resentful about losing their past selves now that they have a baby, i.e. spending time with friends, partying, free time?
I guess it's about time management. It's definitely a lot is going to be lost from your past life, whatever that was. I mean, if you're stepping up to the plate and really taking care of your child, you have to understand that's going to be naturally your priority. But there's always a time, you have to be selfish sometimes, no matter what age you give birth. You need that time for yourself. And I don't know who's a parent in here, but if you are, you know you need that time. And so the only advice I would give them is make sure as long as your priorities are set, you know, pre-plan for this. I have my agenda and I live by it, and I say that, you know, because I literally need to say, you know what, in 2 weeks I'm going to have dinner with my girlfriends, and it will happen. You know, it's something to look forward to. So is it going to be like I want it to be? Is, you know, am I missing out? My friends, am I seeing them posting pictures on Facebook about going out every night of the week? Yes. Does it upset me sometimes? Yeah, it does. But the reality is I have children. So the only advice I would give if they were willing to listen would be to, you know, as long as you have your priorities, you know, at the forefront, it's okay to take that time for yourself. And, you know, it's not wrong to want that past life. You know, I've definitely been there. You know, why did I make this decision? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? You know, I could be doing this. I could be here. I could be there. You know, but when it comes down to it, we did make the decision, and the child or the children are here, and you know, I think it's with some good planning, it can be done. You can have a part of that life. Is it ever going to be where it was? No. So I think the advice I would give that, you know, putting forth the reality of the situation.
I think I was actually having this conversation with somebody the other day, and part of something that we don't realize is that when we talk to teens about getting pregnant, one of the first things we say is, you know, if you get pregnant, you're not going to be able to go out and party with your friends anymore. And we don't realize what that does when somebody actually does become pregnant. When a teenage girl or boy decides to have a baby or they get pregnant, everyone's saying, you know, if you keep this child, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, you're not going to party with your friends anymore, you're not going to be able to go to this, you're not going to be able to do that, and this child is going to ruin your life, and that's what society says. So what happens when this girl with the big belly decides to keep her child? She starts resenting this child, and she starts feeling like this child is ruining my life, this child is going to do this, you know, but maybe she just doesn't want to do an abortion, or maybe she can't do an abortion, or maybe she doesn't want to put it up for adoption because her family wants to help her raise it. So there's a lot of pressure on this girl who wants to be this teenage girl who she is, and raise a child. It's extremely hard, and it's a battle that we fight within, you know, as teen moms. And it was hard for me to try to find a balance. Of course, I didn't want to go out in the beginning because I felt like I looked like crap, and I didn't feel good, and I didn't feel good about myself, and I was like ashamed to be around all the people who were having fun without me. But also I do realize that any parent, regardless of age, needs time away to be a woman. Like a mother needs time to be a woman just at any age, regardless of whether she's a teen mom or a 30-year-old mom, a 40-year-old mom, a 50-year-old mom, it doesn't matter. Like we need time for ourselves, and I can see why their definition of time for themselves is just going out and partying, because that's what teenagers do. It's hard because you can't really say don't do that because that's what they want to do. But it's like finding a balance and trying to see how you can still be a woman, still be a teen, and still have being a parent your priority. But again, no one can look at somebody and say this is what you have to do. You kind of have to find it within yourself. And I think like I mentioned in the beginning, part of the problem is that we push teens to feel so resentful about their children that they don't even want to be around their children because these children are ruining their lives. So it's really hard to work all of the factors in the end. It's a very complicated issue.
When walking into an agency for support, what is the first thing you would expect to hear and complete with the worker?
A smile. I feel like rarely do I walk into agencies, or as a young parent, rarely did I walk into an agency and see a smile. There are many times I've walked in and wanted to walk right back out and not ask for help or even talk to anyone because people just look like they're miserable and they're going to be mean and they're not going to welcome you and they don't want to help you. It just looks like you're burdening them and you're making them feel like you're wasting their time and that you're not worth it. And I felt strongly about that. I've had to walk into the Revere offices for welfare to try to talk to someone just about help and support. What do I do? And I walked in, and the minute I walk in there, people are just so rude to me that I don't even want to stay. I just want to leave. And that's happened in so many different places. There's been a few places that, as soon as I walk in, people are smiling and they're friendly and they really want to listen. But I think that honestly, a smile is enough to make me want to turn around and leave.
How old are your children? How are they doing developmentally? And do they understand you are a teen mom? And if so, do they have to deal with negativity from ignorant adults?
I'll answer that. I always chuckle because, well, first we'll start with ages. I think I said earlier, but I have a 10-year-old boy. My son's Isaiah. And my daughter, who's 9, is Ava. And my 3-year-old, just turned 3 on Monday, is Zachary. And there was a lot of questions in there. Do they know I'm a teen mom? Yes. Was that one thing?
Do they understand you are a teen mom? And if so, do they have to deal with negativity from ignorant adults?
So my children are very well informed. I make it a point. They know everything I do. I typically, even in this situation, if I could have them here with me, I would be. And even, there's things I'm very righteous on with, I'll let them miss school if it comes. I brought them to lobby day. I feel like that's a learning component that, they may be missing school, but I think it's very important for them to understand, the struggles I've been through. They've lived through everything with me. And so I don't keep it a secret. They are very, it's to a point where they're proud of it. They don't know it has a negative connotation. And, my son, I always tell the story because it still makes me laugh, that he says to me, sometime last year, he says, man, Mom, did you know so-and-so's mom's like 36? I was like, Isaiah, listen, let me tell you, let me break this down for you. I am the exception here. I'm very young, and I had you young. So he thought that, man, like all my friends' parents are old, my mom's cool, she's hip. And so he didn't know it was negative. So I had to let him know, and I still laugh about that because ignorance is bliss. He has no idea. He doesn't look at me like I'm a teen mom, despite what society has to say or view me as. He loves me and appreciates me and sees no bias there. So they haven't really had a chance to encounter that. I think that most definitely will come when they're well into the teen years. I think right now they're still very ignorant to what it really means to other people. So for right now, I'm pretty safe. They haven't had to deal with that, but I definitely anticipate it, and it's not like they'll be caught off guard when it does happen. Was there another part? Oh.
I am 23 years old. My daughter is 5. She turns 6 next month. She just started kindergarten in September. And it's been an awesome experience because for the first time I'm meeting all these parents and meeting all these adults who have no clue how old I am. And I can tell there's been conversations where they don't want to ask me my age, but they kind of want to find out, like, how old I am because I look so much younger. And I live like in the suburbs, so all the moms are like, you know, stay-at-home moms that just drive to school in like really nice cars and have nothing to do, and it's cool. But I get there and it's kind of like they'll look at me and we'll talk a little bit, they'll ask me about what I do, and then they'll start asking me about like what college I went to, and I know like one of the questions is going to be like, what year did you graduate? And I always find a way to maneuver. I don't want anybody to know, I don't want anybody to know my age, which is a cool thing. And again, I've had this whole plan. I sat down with my family and I'm like, all right, somebody's going to ask me my age one day and I don't want to tell them, but I don't want to make it like a rude answer either. So the minute somebody tells me that I look young, I'm just going to say, thanks, I moisturize. So that I don't have to answer the question. But my daughter, again, like your kids, my daughter doesn't realize that teen pregnancy is like a bad thing. She knows I became pregnant at 17. She knows I'm 23 now. There's been times where adults have asked her how old I am. And so at after-school program or at school, they'll say, you know, how old is your mom? Because I'm younger than even like some of the after-school helpers. So at the after-school program, you know, they asked her, and she came home one day and she was like, Mom, they asked how old you are. And I said 23, and they were like, really? I'm like, Nellie, and you know, I had to have this conversation with her and explain to her that, you know, a lot of people are older than me, and I had her really young. But again, she doesn't understand why it would be something that would shock people. She doesn't realize that yet, and I'm hoping that these little opportunities open doors for more communication for us, which I think is an amazing thing for us to have. And she thinks it's so cool that I'm so young and that I'm energetic and that I'm, you know, running through the playground with her and going down the slide while all the moms are like, slow down. So I think it has, and so I've had some, she's really proud of me. She's proud of me in so many ways. She knows a lot of what I do, even though she doesn't understand why I'm doing it. She's come to the meetings with me. She knows how involved I am in so many different things, and she's really, really proud of me. I think she's a genius, but I think most parents think their children are geniuses. But I really do think she's a genius. And part of the reason is because I was so isolated during most of my parenting years. I spent all my time with her and all my free time with her. So, and I'm a studious person, and I love reading and I love doing arts and crafts. So we did a lot of that stuff together, and she was the only person I was talking to for so long. And it was almost like, you know, as a baby, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh God, I don't know what shoes to wear. Should I wear this one or that one? And just talking about everything. And it kind of, I feel like she has a very enhanced vocabulary and a very enhanced way of thinking. And I think part of that was because I had no one else to talk to. So I talked to her as if she was an adult. And so it helped increase her method of communication with people, and she's very open. She's very articulate, and part of the reason why I do that as well, I encourage her to be articulate, is because growing up I was very shy of talking to people and standing up for myself, and there's been many opportunities where people have walked all over me, including boyfriends, you know, being a teenager. And so just teaching her that she's strong and that she's powerful and that she can speak up for herself is something that I really focus on. Nobody in her class would ever know that she's the daughter of a teen mom. She doesn't stand out. She doesn't have any developmental issues, even though she was born with congenital hypothyroidism. We've been on top of it since she was born, so it doesn't affect her schoolwork or her education or anything at all. Again, if anybody was to look at her classroom, they would never say that girl is definitely the child of a teen mom. She blends in. She blends in with the kids of the community. She mingles with children of parents of all ages. So I just think it's important that parents realize that I'm doing the same thing they're doing, even though I went through my challenges.
And she speaks in a British accent sometimes.
Oh God, yeah, she does speak in a British accent sometimes.
What is your advice for single moms / teens on child support? Rights on how to get the money. So I guess, so what is your advice for teens on child support?
For me, it was a different journey. I've only been receiving child support for 2 years now. My situation being, you know, domestic violence. But we were together for the first 5 years, you know, until my oldest was 5. So the support was, and he was actually there. But after that, I was scared to get child support. I was very scared. And even after living with him for so many years and then finally going and filing for it, it snuck right back up on me. I remember going to the courthouse for the first time. I was so intimidated. I thought I didn't still have it in me, but it scared me. You know, how was he going to react? You know, was he going to beat me up when I'm leaving here because I'm doing this? You know, and it didn't go that way. So it's a very scary thing. It depends on people's situations. If they feel comfortable going to get child support, go get it. You know, it's definitely helpful. Is it ever going to pan out in a large amount of money? Not always. You know, but I think this is something that makes you feel righteous in getting it. You kind of feel like it's been a long time coming. So I would advise it if the person feels safe, because it's a hard place to be in. If you have that support, or you can find support in somebody to get through that with you, then go ahead. But I would say, you know, instead of just urging, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, just go get the support. What's wrong with you? Why don't you go get it? Nobody really knows that, man, I'm really scared. You know, it puts you in a really crappy situation. So with that being said, if you have the support and you know somebody's background information, you know, support them in that. But I just want to make sure the situation is safe to go forth with it.
It was pretty easy for me to get child support. My priority for a long time, even though I was at a point where I wasn't working and didn't have my own place to live, my priority in my head wasn't child support. I was thinking more about just getting us in a stable situation, and I realized that child support would contribute to that. But eventually I went to get child support, and of course I felt guilty doing it. The father made me feel really guilty, saying that, you know, if I want to be a single mom, I should be able to support a child on my own, and that the problem with this situation also is that I had a place to live. I had a place to where somebody would support me and stabilize our life, but I couldn't be with him because of domestic violence. So it was a very complicated situation. But once I started it, it was really simple, it was really easy, and it was a way of disconnecting us on one level that was already causing so many issues. Because trying to reach out to someone and say, hey, you know, my child needs diapers, or my child needs this, or my child needs that, it's almost always going to provoke an argument between the other parent, especially if they're not together, and especially if the relationship is really bad. So I feel like getting the child support and just knowing that every week you're going to get this amount and you start working out your finances, it just helps ease some of the tension, and it helps you relax because you know that every week you need this amount to do this and you're going to get it. So I feel like it's a good thing for the person who has custody of the child to do, just to stabilize a little bit of finance.
Our last question is connected to that. Advice on what to do when the rules and style at mom's house are different than dad's. How to stand your ground.
Do you mean the parents of the teen parent, or?
The parents of the child?
The parent, I'm assuming the parents of the child, if whoever wrote this wants to fix that.
It's difficult. I feel like with my children that I'm with them with the majority of the time. And I speak specifically my two oldest ones. So with us co-parenting, I'm with them Monday through Friday. And so I'm taking the brunt of carpooling, football, cheerleading, music lessons, dance, doctor's appointments. It's all there, and I'm doing all of that. And comes Friday, you know, he's picking them up, and it's la la land. They can't wait to get there. You know why? Because that's the fun time. The reality is not there. So it's very difficult for me to call him up and say, hey, guess what? You know, Ava didn't have such a hot week. You know, can you enforce this during the weekend? But for him, he's like, you know what? That's your own stuff that happens during the weekend. This is my time, and this is my little bit of time I want to spend it. So, and it's slowly been coming to a point where I think because they're older that he's kind of like, yeah, you're right. You know, I'll make sure she gets this done or he gets this done. But it's very difficult to co-parent and try to enforce discipline or uphold decisions when you're in two different complete households. It's very difficult. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
The biggest issue for me with my daughter going back and forth from my house to his house is being born with congenital hypothyroidism, I wanted to, since the day she was born, put her on an all-organic diet and just keep her on like a low-sodium, low-sugar diet just throughout her whole life, because I knew that at one point it would turn into an issue with her metabolism, and I never wanted her to get to a point where she'd have to start cutting things out of her diet. So I figured if she grows up eating healthy food, if she grows up not, eating sugar and not eating salty foods, then she never has to deal with taking these things out of her life. And it's a decision that he didn't agree with, and he thought I was crazy, and he thought, organic food is so much more expensive, and X, Y, and Z. He had all the reasons why I shouldn't do it, but I knew that it was something that was good for her, and I knew it was something that she would use for the rest of her life. But it came to the point where, Monday through Saturday, she was eating good food, she was eating this and that, and then I pick her up on Sunday. It's like, what did you have for lunch? McDonald's. What did you have for dinner? Burger King. What did you eat at the movie theater? Candy. What did you drink? Soda. So it was like, it was really hard for me. And for me, it wasn't just because of my beliefs, but it was also in my head, it's a health issue also. So it's been years and it's been going on like this, and, I'll explain to him, but because he doesn't see it as like an immediate health risk, he doesn't take it serious. But that's just one of the many things that I deal with him. A lot of it too is like, can you please make sure she's back home by this time, because I have to get her in bed and ready for school the next day, and of course they're always late. Or, can you make sure you pick her up, or the arranged time is 10:30. But, my daughter is like super excited at like 8 o'clock in the morning, already putting her shoes on, and, she's standing at the door and she's waiting, and it's 10:30, 10:35, 10:40, 11 o'clock, 11:30, and there's just a lot of disappointment. So just kind of enforcing that, in my household, we're always on time, and that we eat healthy, and trying to enforce that in his household is really hard, especially because he doesn't live that way. He just kind of does things however he wants, and he doesn't have to live that way during the week, so it's hard for him to change the way he lives for one day a week. Again, it's getting better with this whole virtual connection that we have. I've kind of just been telling him, I got to the point where I'm like, if you want me to go grocery shopping, I will go. Just please don't give her the junk food. And I've just been trying to find ways to, give a little bit, and again, because my priority is my child and not necessarily changing his mind. It's just making sure that she's in the right situation. So I think, like I was starting to say, the virtual connection that we have now, and just emailing each other back and forth, has helped, because I can tell him things and give him suggestions and not have to deal with his dirty looks or him rolling his eyes or whatever. I can just get my message across. I don't have to deal with a response, and he can do what he wants with it.
Were there any questions that I did? So as you all see, our fellows basically have insight on every topic.